So they have a lot of strict rules about guides as far as you cannot race as a pro triathlete in any ITU sanctioned event for 1 year prior to being a guide. So Amy Dixon, the girl I have been guiding for the past few years now, her guide had raced long course ITU Worlds as a pro, and they didn't realize that because it was long course, they didn't think it was an issue, but it was. So she was unable to guide for her, and her backup guide broke her ankle in a race. And she was scheduled to do this race she'd been training for 5 months, and now she had no guide, and it was 2 weeks until the race, and she was desperate for a guide. And the race was in Japan.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Coaches on Couches.
I got props today.
You scared our guests.
Being slouches. With a non-slouch. It's been a while since we had a non-slouch.
One of the least slouchiest people, probably.
Yeah,
on
she
the
might
couch.
be up there on the least slouchy we know.
Yeah.
Just wait till we start reading some stats here.
Yeah.
That's why I had to have a massive notepad over here.
Our good buddy, Kirsten Sass, the Sassinator.
The Sassinator.
On the couch today. We'll get to talking to her and her triathlon journey in just a second. I'm Coach Dale Sanford.
I am Coach Bryant Funston. We are the co-founders of BPC Performance Coaching, where we specialize in helping time-crunched athletes optimize their busy schedules so they can maximize their athletic performance. Every BPC coach is trained in our 5 pillars coaching system that has been developed over the last decade through our work with athletes of all ages and ability levels, from fresh off the couch to world championship competitors. You can find out more about BPC by going to buildpeakcompete.com. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube at Build Peak Compete. And all up on that Insta at BPC Performance.
Yahtzee.
Bingo, bango, bongo.
That's an inside joke. All right, so to be perfectly clear here, this is not a live.
Full disclosure.
Yeah, if you're watching this and it says live, it's a lie. We are pre-recording this on Friday because it just worked out with Kirsten's schedule. So if you're commenting and we're not commenting back, we apologize.
Yes. We're still going to give shout-outs for the gravel race that's happening tomorrow, but is actually...
Yes. So, shout-outs.
It was actually last Saturday.
Shout-outs to everyone that we know is going to kick butt at the gravel race. Where is it at? In
Ackerman.
Ackerman, yeah. Mississippi
Ackerman,
Gravel Cup.
Mississippi. The Rock Crusher.
Rock Crusher.
There you go.
So, shout-out.
Shout out to all of your great results.
Future results. All right. Quick announcement. Once again, if you are, signed up for Memphis 70.3 or considered it, make sure you check out our Memphis 70.3 training group, especially if you're local. You don't have to be local to be a part of the training group because it is mostly online. But that group, you can sign up at any time. And you can find out more information on buildpeakcompete.com/IMMEM. Pretty simple, right?
And it includes the Facebook group, which the Sassinator is a part of here.
Yep, Kirsten is a fellow coach in the Memphis 70.3 training group.
Yep.
And if you stay tuned, we are going to be announcing probably in a week or two our early season tri-camp, which will be held at the Winkler Performance Center.
Yes.
The WPC.
In McKinsey, Tennessee. So it's a fantastic location to get in. Tons of great training, kind of in a rural setting, and everyone stays together. Super social. But
Elvis is there.
Elvis is there.
plus Elvis and the food and bed. Elvis can cook.
Elvis, little known fact, Elvis can cook. Heck of a cook.
So stay tuned for that, and we'll kind of give you some details on that in the coming weeks. Anything else? Any other shout outs? Hey, do you want to give shout outs? What you got?
Oh, off the top of my head, shout out to, can I do long distance?
Go for it.
Can I maybe a shout out to my coach, Suzanne, who's been getting me back on track and getting me ready for a race coming up in 3 weeks already.
Nice.
3 weeks.
Nothing like some off-season peaking.
Right. You only have to hold that all the way through September.
Right.
Anything else? That's it? All right.
All right.
All right, so we'll kind of get into our chat here with the Assassinator.
Do you like that nickname?
Dude,
Before we use that every time we say your name.
What can you do?
she's got a lot of
Just gonna
nicknames.
roll with it.
I like Sassafras.
If you've never, if you don't know who she is, you've probably not been in triathlon that long. But you know, Kirsten is known for smiling during every event she's ever done.
She's the smiling assassin.
Assassinator, yeah. So if anyone out there can find a picture of Kirsten not smiling,
Oh gosh.
we'll pay for your entry into Memphis to May. Not the 70.3. Memphis to May. We'll cover your entry to Memphis to May. It's going to be a tough go, though. I don't think anybody's going to find one.
I don't think it exists. And if
So-
so, we're going to Photoshop it.
So, Brian, just throw down some stats so Kirsten doesn't have to
Yes.
break her humble record.
Yes. So, Sass has been the overall USA Female Triathlete of the Year on 4 separate occasions: 2013, 2015, 2016, 2017. We aren't sure what happened in 14, but we're going to talk about that. The overall female duathlete, duathlon champion of the year. What do we call that?
Yeah, duathlete of the year.
There we go.
That works.
2 times there in 15 and 16. 10 world championship gold medals, which is ridiculous, over a variety of different distances there. 20 age group national championships and a few overall national championships. 1 Ironman overall victory.
No pros,
No pros were there.
just female.
And your first ever triathlon back in 1999, you were last place in your age group. So there you go.
You've come so far.
You've come so far.
It's a little ways.
But I think it's great, right? We'll dive into it. But you hear like all the amazing things that you've done, and the fact is, everyone starts somewhere, right? And it's not typical that a person starts out in a sport and is right away the top person in their sport. There's a process and a lot of dedication that goes into achieving the results you did. It's not like you've always been first in everything you've done, but you've had some great results. And had you quit because you got last place in your age group the first time you did it and said, ugh,
Wouldn't be sitting
it
here.
sucks, I didn't win, I'm out. I mean, just think of all the stuff you would have missed out on. And the people listening, you could be in a very similar situation. So
Absolutely.
So quick sporting background. What was your, growing up, what did you...
Not much of anything. So I grew up in West Tennessee, small little town called McKenzie. We didn't have any cross country or track or swim team or anything like that. I rode a bicycle around a little bit. My dad got me into running. So I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and he decided that all of us needed to run a 5K once in our lives so that we could experience it. And then if we never ran again, that would be fine. So I did a 5K. I didn't win. I probably finished middle of the pack somewhere, and I thought, oh, that was good. And I ran a little bit on and off after that, but never anything.
how old were you at the time?
Maybe 12,
Okay.
something like that. Something like that. I was just young.
Yeah.
Yeah, so no formal sports. My swimming was basically in a lake with the Girl Scouts, side stroke, backstroke, that sort of thing. So when I went to university up in Ontario, my father was doing triathlons at the time. And I went from living in a really small town to all of a sudden in this big city in a dorm with all these people, and school was really tough. And so I had to find a way to balance my stress level. So I went back to running. I thought, well, all you need is a pair of running shoes, right?
Yeah,
so I put on a pair of shoes and started running a little bit. And then my roommate at the time, she said, Kirsten, you like running and all this exercise stuff. Why don't you swim? So we went to the pool together, and I could not make it to the end of the pool. And I was just like flabbergasted. How are all these people of all shapes and sizes making it through the pool just fine? And why can't I do it?
So feel like you're drowning each time you try to? Yeah.
So it became my challenge. So I started going to the pool regularly. And after a while, I noticed there was a girl who was usually there when I was there. And I caught her one day after I finished swimming. And I said, how many times back and forth make a mile? And she kind of looked at me and she said, I'm actually the coach of our little local triathlon club here. Why don't you come and start swimming with us? And so that was kind of my bridgeway into...
You got the invite.
I got the invite.
Invited you in. That's nice.
Yeah. And then I got a mountain bike my second year up there, and I started biking back and forth to my classes and started doing a little cycling with them. And I officially joined the triathlon club. And when my father found out, he was so excited. He figured I would be home from school right in time for the Memphis and May triathlon, and not to worry, he would sign me up.
And he'd take care of that for you.
And he did. And he put me on one of his old bikes, and that was my first triathlon.
And that was 1999,
That was
right?
99, and it was an Olympic distance.
And your dad was 6'3".
6'3", and I'm 5'9". So I didn't get in my aero bars at all.
Yeah, you were riding your pops' bike.
I hope
He did lower the seat a little bit for me, I think.
There's got to be some good pictures of that somewhere.
Yeah.
But is she smiling? Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, Dale.
I don't know. That might be the one. The one and only. So, so you got into triathlon, mainly through, the nudge of family and friends, and then, now you're obviously training and racing at a high level, but you're not like you're not a pro athlete. You still work. You have kids. So go into a little bit of your family.
So I do work. I'm a physician assistant at McKinsey Medical Center, just family practice. I've been there for about 15 years. I've got 2 children, a daughter and a son. My daughter's 10, my son is 8. And yeah, it's a lot of juggling, a lot of early mornings, a lot of trying to find the balance to make things fit in.
So you've been known to get up like pre-4 o'clock.
Yeah, yep. Here the last few weeks with my training ramping back up, I've been getting up usually 4 o'clock is about the average, 3:30 a lot of mornings. Sleeping in is 5.
So what, and we kind of we've done a couple of different podcasts with this topic involved, but what do you, how do you make yourself get up at, are you just a morning person or?
I just know I don't have any other time to do it. If I don't get up in the morning and get it done, it doesn't get done. And right now I'm guiding for visually impaired girls, so I have a very high standard that I have to, because somebody else is depending on me. So it's either get up and get it done or not do it. So
do you end up normally pushing most of your training together in the morning?
So I still try to keep the quality. So quality is paramount. So I do my quality workouts in the morning. And then if I do have time to do an afternoon session, it's more of an active recovery or a technique work or something that I can get to balance out. Strength work I'll usually do in the afternoon, that sort of thing.
Good deal. So, we talked about how, you got into triathlon a little bit. Talked about the first triathlon. What made you stay in it is the big, the big, again, we talked about you, for anybody who has any lick of competitiveness to them, finishing last in their age group does one of two things. Either say, I'm done with this, or lights the fire and
lots of upside.
Yeah.
There's lots of upside. When you're last, there's only one place you can go, right? You either tie or you go up.
This is true. Well, I was just so happy to survive, first of all.
Yeah, right.
But the neat thing is, after the race, I just remember the whole atmosphere was amazing. There was live music, there was food, everybody was hanging out. They were talking about the race, talking about races they'd done in the past, what their plans were. And I was like, what a great community. And not only that, most of the people, and this was back when Memphis in May was huge, I probably got passed on the bike by like 1,000 people.
Sure.
And 999 of them said something encouraging to me as they went by. And I was kind of floored because I'd never done anything sport-wise where your competitors are so encouraging. And, you know, afterwards, everybody asked about the race and were so positive. And I thought, you know, I just really like this environment. And I think maybe if I train a little bit, I can do a little bit better.
Exactly, right?
But it was fun.
I'd have to say that's pretty much what got me. Like, my first race was Mighty Might, and I almost died. And I think I was probably bottom third of the race. But it really was. It was like after the race, and even in that race is not as convenient to hang around afterwards because it's a point to point. But like, after the race, everybody was so happy, positive, hanging out. Like, people were, you know, cracking beers in downtown area there, and like, it was just like a really, like, I had not done a sport where that was the end result, like the end of it. It was always like, I've always done sports where it's like, hey, good job, to the locker room type. You know, you don't really get to do anything afterwards. So yeah, that was a similar thing of what kind of hooked me.
Yeah, very much a community aspect to it, right? Like, everyone's kind of in it together. Everyone's got their own stories. Everyone's suffering just as much and going through the same stuff, albeit at different speeds, right? And I think, you know, that's kind of like I gravel, you know, on the road side of things. Gravel's becoming this big thing, and that's a lot of what I'm hearing from folks is a very similar thing. Everyone's hanging out afterwards, having fun, reliving the experience that they just had, encouraging each other out on the road. It seems like a very similar community style dynamic to it, which is a fun, awesome thing to be a part of, right?
Definitely.
So like, you know, you started at the bottom essentially. Like, how long did it take for you to, like, for things to like start clicking and like being competitive and even winning races? And then, like, what was your like method behind improvement, like throughout that time?
So, and I was trying to recall, I think the first time I won Memphis in May was about 2007. So it was probably about 7 or 8 years.
So say that again.
So
for anyone who's like newer to the sport,
it was not an overnight.
Wondering why they're not improving to the top of the podium.
Yeah.
You know that 10,000 hours of practice thing?
Yeah.
It's really a thing.
It's for real.
Especially in endurance sports, right?
Yeah.
I think it rewards you even more, you know, your first few years where you're building that foundation, right? Yeah.
And that's kind of the method I use. It's just a consistency. It's being...
She did it for us, Dale. Consistency.
It is. It's consistency. It's regular. It's, you know, you get out there and you ride your bike 3 times a week, and you get out there and run 3 times a week, and you get yourself to the pool. And one of my favorite, I have to tell you this, one of my favorite, like, visualizations of the training process is when you first start training, you're like a lump of clay. So little things make a big impression, right? Mm-hmm. And as you continue in your process, the clay hardens and it becomes more like granite or marble. So the same things that you did when you first started, you can't necessarily do because number 1, they won't impact it, or number 2, they'll break it, right? But you can still use a chisel and still get finer details. So you just have to change and evolve as your training goes. But I kind of like that.
It's a good analogy. I like it.
And it takes a lot more work to get the small changes, right?
Yeah.
When you're trying to mold something that's hard, there's a lot more that goes into getting small percentages or small changes to occur, and that's where I think
that's a mistake a lot of people make over, especially people who have been in triathlon for 6-7 years plus and aren't really making the improvements that they want to. It's because they're doing the same thing that they were when they started, or even like you get a couple years into it, and I always say there's like some like default improvements that you're going to make just by doing. Like you're getting more experience even, and that's going to make you have better races. Yeah,
your percentage gains are always a lot bigger on the front end than when you elite folks and you especially, you're probably, if you can get a few percent each year,
that's huge.
It's huge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, just you cannot do the same thing that you've been doing even 3 years in. If you're 6, 7 years in now, there has to be, you have to be completely changing and finding out. And the big thing is picking your limiters. Like, what are your biggest limiters? And those don't even have to be like, whenever I ask somebody about their limiters, they're like, well, I suck at swimming. Like, okay. Like, what about swimming? Like, drill in a little bit and pick something and then focus on that. And like, don't just say I'm bad at this leg of the sport.
This whole thing. This whole thing I'm horrible at. I'm horrible at getting to the race.
So I kind of suck at swimming, and then I'm not so strong on the bike, and I'm a little slow on the run.
So that kind of ties in. One of the things I used to love to do. So my dad and I were very close. Obviously, he got me into triathlon, and I stayed in triathlon. A lot of it was because of him, because we picked these races to do in these different challenges. So we're really big on New Year's resolutions. I love New Year's resolutions. But also what we love to do is at the first of the year, take a look and say, okay, what do we want to work on this year? So one year it was just biking. So that's when I really started doing the road racing series in Tennessee. One year it was swimming. I said, all right, we got to work on our swimming. So we went and we found this open water swim camp in St. John, which was pretty awesome. But you know,
to rough it through that.
But you know, I did the longest swim in my life there, 7 miles in the ocean.
Oh, geez.
But it did worlds for improving my confidence in the water and learning to swim in different conditions.
Yeah.
And then running. One year we said, all right, we want to work on our run. And there's this great run coach named Bobby McGee, or like what you guys do with your running technique and say, okay, I'm really going to dial in. I'm going to do, Tennessee has a great state parks running tour in the winter. Every Saturday in a different state park. It doesn't start till 11 a.m.
Cool. Yeah.
Go and work on the running. So, you know, we just kind of there's so many different pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah,
One year it's more working on nutrition. Okay, what am I doing? Where do I need to cut out? So
when you are focusing on a specific leg of the sport, were you doing like a lot more of that, like sport, like frequency during the week? Like instead of swimming 2 times, you're swimming 4 times, or like?
Yeah, so it would vary. So sometimes yes, but more of it was like picking a goal event. So say, all right, I want to go and do a century ride if I've never done a century ride.
Okay, so picking a specific event within that one.
A challenging
Yes.
aspect within that discipline that would force you then to have
really
to
focus on it and work on it. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Now, that's a great pointer, right? Because there's nothing that helps keep you motivated and accountable than having a lofty goal where you know you have to put the time in to get there. If it's something where, you know, like for me personally, a century ride, most of the time I can go do a century ride just fine.
Yeah.
But if I signed up for something that was, you know, like a Dirty Kansas 200 miler on gravel roads, that's something where like
70.3
or like Memphis 70.3, that's somewhere like, well, crap, I better train. You know, I can't just go through the motions and make this happen. It's something that's going to force me to have to be put in that extra work that I may not do otherwise.
Yeah.
That's great.
Absolutely.
A great tip.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, you talk a lot about your dad getting you into the sport, keeping you in the sport, and that kind of stuff. You know, for those that don't know, you know, he passed away a few years ago. You know, suddenly it was a huge hit to the entire triathlon community. And while we try not to get too serious while we're sitting on this couch, just like talk a little bit about how the sport has kind of helped you get through like a tough time.
Absolutely. So it was really hard at first. I remember he suffered a bad head injury, so he was in the hospital for a while. And for a while, we thought he could pull through it. And when we figured out that he couldn't, I remember putting on my running shoes and going outside to go for a run. And it was the first time in my entire life that I wasn't sure I'd be able to go for a run because he was so tied up. And every time I went for a run, every time I went for a bike ride, we worked together. We bike back and forth to work together. You know, we swim together. Just the day before this happened, we'd been to the pool together. So it was the first time I ever had to really stop and think, wow, I don't know if I can do this. But then I knew that he would just be absolutely crushed if I stopped doing it. And for me, it's still my connection to him because so much of what I have and have accomplished is because he pushed me and got me through. And it's been a very healing process too, because still carrying that through and carrying his spirit and being with my local group of people, a lot of whom he inspired. And so they kind of carry that as well. So it's just been a really good thing to be able to keep going. There were a couple races were really tough the first year, but then it's gotten better.
I mean, he was like even as not even in your community, just being in West Tennessee, you could tell that he had a huge impact on the endurance community. I mean, basically from Nashville over, just between his support of the events, going to events, he was at everything, that type of thing. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure it was, a super difficult time, but that's just kind of part of like what the sport does. It's like the community aspect of the sport is so strong. Like if it's hard to like not get into the community side. I know there's a few people that we coach that are kind of lone wolf, train by themselves all the time. They go to races by themselves, but like the majority are like dialed into a community. Those are like, they're good friends. Those are the people that if you get in trouble, you're going to call them. Like, so for those that are listening but aren't into triathlon, if you are like missing a community or like searching for a community, like highly recommend like looking into getting into triathlon just for the community aspect. The rest will like follow and come with, but I mean that's a huge thing. So moving along, I mean you've been through some rough times in the last couple of years, and then you've always been in our eyes anyways, probably the most humble person I've ever met, sometimes to a fault, because sometimes you gotta brag on yourself a little bit, but now you're kind of even going a step beyond that and like basically giving your season, your racing to another person. So talk a little bit about like how you kind of got into doing para-tri and guiding, and then like what that's like and what is, how it's been for you.
So this is something I'm very passionate about, and it came about in an interesting way. It was kind of like the triathlon grapevine, somebody reached out to me and asked me if I would ever be interested in guiding somebody. And I said, yes, but I know nothing about it. Like I thought you had to go through some kind of training. I figured it was at least a year training before you could be trusted to be a guide for somebody who can't see, right? Well, that's not the case.
No, I've been there.
Short supply.
Yeah, very short supply. It's amazing. So anyways, there was a girl, her name is Yvonne Schmidt. She had raced triathlons in the past and she had wanted to get back into it. So she was looking for a guide. So she reached out to me through this grapevine, and I said, sure, I'll be happy to, but I have no idea what I'm doing. And she said, oh, that's fine. She's like, oh, I raced with first-time guides all over the world. Usually we don't have anybody who's experienced. And I said, okay. So I literally flew down to Florida, met her and her husband there, and watched as she and he put together this tandem.
Yeah.
It was just incredible. And so we did this triathlon together. And so for the swim, you actually have to be tethered. Yeah. So they have very strict rules and regulations.
So everything you've done, I don't mean to interrupt, but everything you've done at this point is all visually impaired athletes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, visually impaired. So Yvonne was completely blind. Okay. No sight whatsoever. So your swim tied basically by a bungee cord, and there's no standard bungee cord. So you see people with everything from like cat collars or dog collars to like full-on bungee cords to race belts with a bungee cord in between. But the only catch is it cannot stretch more than a meter between the two of you. Okay. So they measure that beforehand. They've got people on stand-up paddle boards watching you. Oh, wow. So the day before the race, you get a chance to go and practice the course. So you basically sit and talk her through it. Okay, you got 200 meters out, 90-degree left-hand turn, 200 meters, 90-degree left-hand turn, so she can kind of visualize it herself. And then you go swim it. So Yvonne and I had our little bungee cords on our calves, which was all good until I swam left and it pulled her leg and she swam right. So it was very good. We got to practice. So it was quite a learning curve.
Oh, for sure.
And so as a guide, most of the time I swim with my head up because I have to watch her. I've got a sights. I've got to watch for people around me. So it's a little bit of a pressure situation. Yeah. Then the bike is on a tandem. I'm in front, of course. I get asked that a lot. You'd be surprised. So that was fine. And then the run, again, you're just like bungee cord together, basically. And it's amazing to me how many little things we take for granted, like a little lip in the pavement, a plastic cup that's on the ground. You have to call out every little thing because otherwise she could trip so easily. So it was the first time I'd ever been around a visually impaired person or somebody who's completely blind. And there were so many times I caught myself just saying silly things like I went to the bathroom and flipped the light off as she was going in. I'm sorry, I flipped the light off. You know?
She's like, nope, it was already off.
Okay, I'm good. I'm good. So anyway, so I raced with Yvonne and we did fine. We made it through the race. And then a couple months later, I'll never forget, I was actually driving back from Duathlon Nationals when it was out in North Carolina. And she called me and it was the first I'd heard from her since the race. And she said, you know, I've got this other girl who's visually impaired and she's looking for a guide. Her guide fell through. Would you be interested? I said, well, as long as that's okay with you, if you don't need me for a race, that's fine. So they have a lot of strict rules about guides as far as you cannot race as a pro triathlete in any ITU sanctioned event for 1 year prior to being a guide. So Amy Dixon, the girl I have been guiding for the past few years now, her guide had raced long course ITU Worlds as a pro. And they didn't realize that because it was long course, they didn't think it was an issue, but it was. So she was unable to guide for her. And her backup guide broke her ankle in a race. And she was scheduled to do this race she'd been training for 5 months. And now she had no guide. And it was 2 weeks until the race. And she was desperate for a guide. And the race was in Japan. So,
all right. Did you have a passport already?
And again, I did have a passport.
Okay, that's good.
But and I told her, I was like, you know, I've guided once in my life. I've been on a tandem like 3 times, and 2 of those was my sister in a parking lot with me before I went down to see Yvonne. Because
I didn't mind wrecking her.
I figured, yeah, kudos to my sister for trusting me. I was like, I better at least get myself on a tandem before I go and take care of this girl. And for the record, her husband made me bike with him on the back before he let her get on. Yes. And I don't blame him one bit. So anyway, so I told Amy, I was like, if you can find anybody who's guided before, you're going to be better off. So please look for somebody. But if you can't find anybody, then I'm better than nobody and I'll go. And so fortunately, my work was so supportive of this. 2 weeks notice, they helped rearrange my schedule. My husband was supportive. He was on board. He said, yes, go, you know, you've got an opportunity to do this. Yeah. And so I went and I met Amy in Japan. The random thing about Japan is it's actually illegal for 2 people to ride on a bicycle together. So we couldn't even practice on the tandem until I know, right? And so
I want to know what the people were doing that broke that or that caused that law to go into place.
So our practice was literally your worst case scenario, which was probably good, but it was like maybe a 1/4 mile loop on cobblestones in the rain with a bunch of para-triathletes. There were people wiping out, but we made it through. And then, yeah, so we did the race together and I've been guiding for her since. So last year, she was my priority. And this year, she's my priority. We have our first race together in 3 weeks. We've got a big year because she's trying very hard to make a slot for the Paralympics in Tokyo in August. So
so in order for you guys to get that spot, what is the qualification?
So there's a series of races that we have to do, and you get points based on your finish in the race. So, and then they have a Paralympic, Paratriathlon, Paralympic, anyways, ranking score based on how many points you get per race. And you have to be in the top 9, I believe it is, in order to get a slot. And right now we are 7th, I believe. So there's a whole race series starting in the end of February and running through the end of June. The last race is in Montreal in the end of June.
So and then if you guys do get that spot, and then it's what? July,
August.
Yeah,
At the end of August are the Paralympics.
Gotcha. Well, that's exciting.
Super exciting.
So of the three, because I've done some guiding just on the bike, I haven't done the other stuff. Of the three, what would you say is the most challenging to be a guide?
Swim.
Is it swim by far?
Absolutely, the swim. So swimming is my weak link anyways, personally. So I work really hard on the swim. And then to be responsible for sighting and staying on course and protecting her from other people that might swim on top of her and making sure she's staying on course. There's a lot of different dynamics at play. So
definitely,
I'm always happy when we get through the swim.
Yeah, the bike is probably the easiest of the three, right?
The bike is great, except the courses are usually crazy technical.
Okay.
So we've raced on a couple that were like 5 loops with 20 turns per loop, if you can imagine that. So imagine a crit that's crazy with a bunch of,
Now, if someone that's listening is like, wow, that sounds super cool. You know, I'd love to get into being a guide.
Yes.
Do you know who a contact point is
They
for
are
that? Or?
always looking for guides. So there's actually there's a Facebook group for them you can search out. There's Dare to Try. There's the Challenged Athletes Foundation. Any of those will get you in the right direction for guiding. But they're always looking for guides, and it's a whole range of abilities from beginners all the way up. So it's a very rewarding thing to do. I tell you, there's nothing like finishing that race and seeing, you know, somebody who's overcome so many obstacles. I always say it takes away any excuse I ever have to not want to get out of bed in the morning and think about what some of these people do and overcome with what they've got.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like it's made triathlon a team sport, and you know, for most people who have a little bit of competitiveness, they're not going to let a teammate down. So it just the accountability, I'm sure, is
Huge.
way up.
And my hat's off to anybody who does an Ironman as a guide, because that's one I haven't tackled yet. It's hard enough to do by myself.
Some of the most smoked I've ever felt after doing a race was when I've done the paracycling stuff. Like I've come home from a weekend over in Oak Ridge, the Tennessee Paracycling Open, and it was like a full week that I needed to recover just because it was so much different than riding on your own.
So who's the contact for like paracycling?
Greg Miller's the guy
Miller.
who is probably doing, and then Pam Fernandez is the lady who's out of Colorado Springs. So she puts on, like, she does a lot of the stuff through USA Cycling and through the like they put together an actual camp for not only visually impaired athletes but also the people that want to guide. So Greg Miller's probably the most connected of everyone. He's the one who got me kind of linked up.
Sure. So
if you're interested, I can just message us and I can get you in contact with Greg. Super easy.
It's worth doing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's fun.
Awesome. All right, we'll finish with some like quick rapid fire questions. Brian, do you have any that you want to throw in before I start firing them off?
Yeah, I got a quick one. So we talk a lot, and you mentioned already, consistency is being huge. We know life gets in the way. You've got kids, you've got a family, you've got work. What do you do? What's a go-to workout, or what do you do if you wake up and maybe you've hit snooze, but you know you still got to get a workout in? Is there like a go-to workout you do, or something that you would encourage people to not make an excuse and say, oh, well, I can't get 90 minutes, so I'm not going to do anything?
Well, they say there's nothing worse than the feeling of missing a workout somehow. So even if I can't, I guess my default has always been to run, because that's the easiest of the three. You just have to put on a pair of shoes and get yourself out the door. So we've got this loop around my house. We've always called it the block. So if I have enough time, my go-to is to do a run around the block. And my kids, when they're little, I say, okay, I'm just going out to run around the block. And they say, okay, you can go run around the block really, really quickly. Of course, our block is it's 4 miles. It's 4 miles, but it sounds good.
Just a quick 8-mile run.
Run around the block.
4 miles and finish up a nice little kicker hill. All right. What's worst triathlon moment?
Oh gosh, worst triathlon moment. That's a tough one. I did Ironman Wisconsin the year it was blazing hot. I mean, it was like 2005, I think, or something. It looked like a war zone. You're on the bike and there are people like abandoned on the side, just like laid out. And I got a flat at mile 60, and it was a blazing sun. I was out of water. I was able to change it. I was able to finish the race, but that was That was the worst. I remember I was doing the run and, you got your bib with your name on it. And there was a cop out on the running course and I'm just like shuffling along. He goes, come on, Kirsten, you can do this. I'm like,
Were you smiling is the question.
I was probably grimacing more than smiling.
But her grimace is a smile, so that's good.
Favorite event?
Oh, I have to say, I've had a lot over the years, but last September I did the Dixie, are you talking about like a triathlon in general?
Yeah.
The Dixie Triathlon, hands down my favorite event, probably ever since my first Memphis in May. One, because it's local to me, it's like 15 minutes from my house. And number two, it's so recaptured the essence of that first triathlon I did.
Yeah.
There were so many people that were just encouraging. It was this great supportive atmosphere. It was a little off the beaten path. It's a really cool event.
The city really supports the heck out of it too.
The medals, the finishers' medals are all handmade at a local pottery shop. The awards are all handmade locally. It's very cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool event. Favorite post-race meal?
So my guilty pleasure is chips and salsa. So it has to involve something with chips and salsa.
I was talking a lot about chips and salsa
I know,
yesterday.
right?
Matter of fact, we better hurry up. All right. So chips, salsa, Mexican food. Let's see. Favorite try moment. Why not throw that one in there?
Oh, so my favorite ever is I went and did the national championship for sprint and Olympic distance when it was in Omaha, and my father was there. He wasn't able to race. He'd come down with a bad cold beforehand, but he was there. And it's one of the few times he's ever been at nationals when I was racing. And it was, first of all, it was just cool to have him there in general.
Yeah.
And number two, I had probably the best race weekend of my entire life because, it's a staggered start. They start people at 7 a.m. until 10 a.m. So you have no idea where you finish overall. But I managed to win overall female for the standard distance, the Olympic distance on Saturday. So Sunday is the sprint distance. And I am getting a little older and sprint distance seems to be a little bit more of a younger generation thing these days. So I didn't really go in with any expectations. They're very quick. I didn't go in with any expectations. But I was doing the run and my dad was calculating it all. So I'm on the run and he goes, Kirsten, I think you can get this, but you're really going to have to go. And I'm like, and my legs
Stop loafing.
My legs are screaming because of course I raced the day before, but I was like, all right, well, I'll just give it all I have. And it literally came down to the finish. He's like, you're so close. You just got to go. And I just ran with everything I had. And the announcer kept me there afterwards. And he was just like keeping me in limbo, right? Because they knew, but they were telling me. And I ended up winning the overall female for the sprint as well. And it was just so cool. He was so excited. And I think it didn't matter where I finished, really. Just the fact that he was there was pretty cool. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. My favorite Sass moment was Tiger Lane crits. When was it? Last year, 2 years ago?
It's been a couple of years.
It was in you were in the 3-4 race, the men's 3-4 race.
Oh yeah.
And a break got up the road.
That's right.
And
I forgot about this.
And all of a sudden, Sass attacked, and it's probably a 30-second gap. It's a pretty big gap.
Yeah.
For the breakaway.
Quite a few people have been dropped already.
Yeah.
It wasn't an easy men's 3-4 race.
This is why it's my favorite moment.
Yeah.
And so Sass attacks, and and did somebody come with you? Was Joyner with you?
Joyner had gone, and he fell back, and Pfeffer was there. But then he fell back. So it was, I remember, it was Taylor and a couple other people.
So Kirsten proceeds to slowly chip away at this gap solo, and then we're all warming up. We're like warming up for the 1-2-3 race, and we're like, she's gonna clear that gap.
She
gonna
totally
clear that
bridged
gap.
across that gap.
And damn sure she did.
They were probably
You got what, third overall?
Yeah, and placed third. Yeah, that was. I'll never forget that. That was awesome to watch.
And I think everyone who was in that break are now Cat 2s or better.
Yeah.
I think Chase Peeler, was in
Chase
that break.
Peeler was,
and
yeah.
it was Derek. I think it was Derek, Taylor, Chase.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So 2 Cat 1s and a Cat 2.
Yeah.
Strong.
It was fun.
Beast mode. That's why we call her the Assassinator.
That's it. That's where she got the nickname.
I got one last one. What would be like your biggest tip for a person that's new to the sport?
Keep it fun. It's so easy to get caught up in, oh, I have to do this and I have to do this and I have to do this. But really, at the end of the day, we get to do it. Keep it fun. Find a supportive group to do it with. Go do a race together. It's so fun. There's nothing like seeing your friends out on the race course and doing a little heckling or encouragement, whatever the case may be. But keep it fun. I remember there was one coach I worked with for a while, and he would always say, "Why do they always say good work or good job?" And it's really just play, you know. Yeah. So it's important to keep that perspective.
Yeah, I always tell every athlete that I take on, I say, it's gonna get structured, and you're gonna have all these workouts to do. At the moment it stops being fun, tell me, because we can rework things and make the training looser and more strict when we need it. Yeah. Like I'm going on your lead on that, and just be honest about how what your mental state is in the sport right now, because it's easy to, especially when everything outside of triathlon changes day to day. Yeah, it's easy. Life stress stuff. Yeah, it's easy to it's easy to have the sport turn into just another stress because you're trying to fit it all in. But it's not that hard to loosen the reins a little bit and still make improvements and not have to worry about I gotta get in every session. It's not it's not like that. You can still miss a few and you're gonna be fine. Just stay consistent. It's
one of my other favorite quotes. The pressure of competition should never be greater than the pleasure of competition.
There you go.
Well, and I think Dale and I have chatted quite a bit. We got the poster thing up over there. Short course is not a crime. One of the biggest reasons why we like people doing short course stuff, especially if you're newer to the sport, is you can race more often. If you are just training for an Ironman distance event, typically you're doing maybe 1 or 2 races per year, but it's fun to get out there. It's fun to race. It's fun to test your fitness. But more so, it's the community aspect afterwards, right? Yes. The more you can do that. I know how many people go and scour the internet on Monday after they've done a race, and they're looking for pictures, and they're kind of reliving the whole race, and you're going back through it. It's an exciting thing, and that in and of itself can keep you motivated.
Absolutely.
So racing more is a great way.
I love to race.
Now, there's a balance, obviously. There's a balance.
We almost made it through the whole show without bringing up Kirsten's race calendar.
She's only doing, 168 races this year?
No, I'm scaling back. I'm learning.
Okay. Scale it back to 200 days.
I think so many people only will go race if they feel like they're on peak fitness. Yeah. Whereas, you learn so much from racing too. It's fun. It's a great way to test yourself. But, don't only show up to a race when you're as fit as you think you can be for fear of not having a result that you want. Get out there and have fun with it.
There's no better training than racing.
Yeah.
As long as you can recover from it, there's no better training than racing. So...
Any questions we did not ask you that we should have?
I think you guys covered it all.
Did. Okay.
Oh, perfect.
I've got one final one.
All right.
Does Elvis cook the way he does for the camp all the time?
Why do you think I have to train so much?
He is a fantastic cook.
And for anyone who's ever seen pictures of any local race, you'll know when we're saying Elvis.
You may have even caught the Elvis at some of the ITU, some of the World Championship races. He's always out there.
Been known to show up there too.
All right, folks, we appreciate you hanging out, listening, watching. We will catch you guys next time. Adios.
Peace.